Welcome to the Daily Fantasy 5 for Thursday, June 27th. This is episode 129, and we are bringing you the 5 things you need to know every day in the world of fantasy sports. Today, that includes 2 stories out of Major League Baseball. We've got an NBA free agency rumor to go over, and we're going to be talking about fantasy football wide receivers 5 through 8. So we are getting into the top 8, the elite 8 wide receivers. We'll get to all that after a word from our sponsor, www.mathradio.com, where you can pick up an online math course for as little as $9.99 to help your child ages 7 through 17 get better grades, score higher on exams, and even get into college. Once again, that is www.mathradio.com for a lifetime membership for as little as $9.99. Mathradio.com. All right, let's start off in the world of baseball. Yankees injuries seem like they lead our show every other day. Well, Giancarlo Stanten is back to the injured list with a knee injury. No word as to how long he will be out yet, but he is back out of the lineup again. Someone who's joining the lineup for the Chicago Cubs is Kimbrel. He should be their closer starting tonight. If you don't already own him on your fantasy team, you better act now. It's probably already too late. We've been telling you about him for like 3 weeks now, so shame on you. But if you want to start him in a daily fantasy lineup, tonight might be a good night to get him a save as he joins the Cubs tonight. All right. Finally, we're going to talk a little NBA. There was a free agent rumor that the Celtics are now the leader for Kemba Walker. So what does this mean from a fantasy standpoint? Well, Kemba's numbers shouldn't really be affected all that much. He put up 25 points a game last year for the Charlotte. They're still the Charlotte Hornets? Yes, they are. For the Charlotte Hornets, I would think he could put up similar numbers for the Celtics. I would, however, think that means they are going to be pivoting a little bit away from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. So their numbers might dip a little bit if you have them in dynasty leagues. I would be a little bit upset about this news. I think it'd be much better for you if they went the route of signing a Brogdon and then a center type rather than going all in on a point guard who is score first like Kemba Walker. So, again, I would say Kemba Walker stock would remain the same or go up. For the Jays out of the Celtics, Tatum and Brown, I would say the stock goes down just a little bit. All right, that's all the news of the day. We're going to get to our top fantasy wide receivers. We're going 5 through 8 today. We'll start with number 8. He is Mike Evans out of Tampa Bay. Evans is in my elite 8 wide receivers because he's hit that elite level before. Back in 2016, he had 96 receptions, 1,321 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Those are some incredible numbers. Since then, his targets have dropped from 173 to, the high 130s the last 2 years. This is partly due to the emergence of O.J. Howard, Chris Godwin. They had Jackson on the team as well for all those years. But even with the lower number of targets last season and the year before, he still racked up a lot of yards. Last year, he had 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns. If you bump up those touchdown totals a little bit, he's right back to where he was before. He finished 8th last year. He's also in a great situation. Tampa has a defense that is simply dreadful, meaning they're often trailing in pretty much every game, and they must pass all game long to get back into the game. So there's plenty of targets out there for Evans. Just to be clear, when I say they were bad last year, they were actually the worst defense in all of football. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause about Evans is the quarterback situation. Blaine Gabbert is now backing up Jameis Winston. I don't really like either of those options. Evans will still get things done. It's just I think he is outside of that very top group, and he's still elite, but he's not at the very top of the elite guys. I like him 8th. He's going at kind of the end of the turn in the second round. So if you can get him, at the end of the second round, beginning of the third round, I feel very good about that. As with Evans for me, he's going to be my wide receiver number 2. I would also love him, and if you're going with a running back early, to have him as your wide receiver 1. But for me, I'd like to get him as my wide receiver 2. As you've seen, I'm wide receiver heavy at the top of the draft. I think that is where the value is as far as the wide receivers go. All right, next up, someone who doesn't have as much value. Odell Beckham Jr. finished 15th among wide receivers last year, despite only playing 12 games. He is now with the Browns, so he's got a totally different situation. In his 5-year career, he's only played all 16 games one time. That is reason for concern. He's probably the riskiest wide receiver in this group, but he certainly has the talent to finish number 1 overall among wide receivers. the Browns' offense is one big reason for that. This should be an explosive group with Baker Mayfield, a solid offensive line, a bunch of other weapons, including Chubb, Landry. Who else do they have? A couple other wide receivers. They should be getting just all kinds of weapons. They should be scoring all the time, constantly in the red zone. And Beckham should have plenty of opportunities to score touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. averaged 10 targets per game last season in New York. If he maintains that rate in Cleveland, he could be in store for somewhere between 120, 160 targets. Obviously, it makes a difference. However, this offense should be so good that it doesn't really matter that much, as he should have potential to score constantly. If he gets to 14 games, I envision top 5 status. I'm just not sure it'll happen. Could the injury bug hop up again? Could there be some kind of volatility? Who knows? But if he gets to 14 games, I see him being drafted or being a top 5 wide receiver. However, he's being drafted as the 5th wide receiver overall. So there's not a lot of value here, and he's certainly not falling to me very often, as I have him ranked number 7. So I'm taking other guys ahead of him for where he's going in the draft. Tremendous upside, but he's only, again, played 16 games over the last 2 years. So that's not many games over these last 2 seasons. So Beckham is kind of a high risk, high reward character, and I don't want to draft him at number 5 where he's going in ADP. Number 6 on my list is Antonio Brown. He finished 4th last year in fantasy. That's despite being unhappy and being in the news constantly all year long. The man knows how to put up stats. He's been the best wide receiver in football for a long time now. And I guess the question is, can he continue that pace with the Raiders? So everything's going to be new for him this season. He's now the face of a franchise. In Pittsburgh, he really wasn't the face. He might have been the best player, but Ben Roethlisberger was the face of the franchise, right? He was the one in the spotlight. And now Brown will have to shoulder that load. How will that affect him? A new team, a new quarterback, new offensive line, new coaches, new everything for Brown. So it's a little bit risky. He's being drafted as wide receiver number 6, which is exactly where I have him. We might all look stupid at the end of the year, right? When Brown finishes as one of the top wide receivers in fantasy again. But there is risk with this new team. And I think some of the players above him don't carry that much risk, which is why I have him rated down here at number 6. He's going, again, in the same range that Evans is going, at the end of the second round. There's a few players I like ahead of him, but I'm happy to grab him as a top-end wide receiver. So Antonio Brown should, despite everything, be a very good wide receiver again this season. All right. The last wide receiver for today is number 5 on my list, Michael Thomas. He finished 6th last year. I feel like Michael Thomas has been in the league forever, but I was totally wrong about this. In fact, he's only been in the league for this upcoming season will be his 4th season, if you can believe that. Any reason this won't be his best season yet? Well, not really. There is a new center and a new tight end in town, but that's pretty much it. The rest of the offense has not changed much. They are dynamic, and he is the bell cow of this offense. He's been on the doorstep of 150 carries. I'm sorry, not 150 carries, 150 targets the last 2 years. If he can knock that door down and get 160, 170 receptions, 170 targets, he could finish in the top 3, which is where he's being drafted right now. He's being drafted 3rd overall. However, that's kind of his upside. And for me, I generally think he's, he'll be right behind those top guys around number 5 where I have him slotted. So he's not falling to me very often, even though I love Michael Thomas. He won me a lot of leagues last year in daily fantasy. He was absolutely outstanding, but I just don't see him. He gets a lot of catches. He always has his hands on the ball, but it's not like a guy like Adams or even Antonio Brown that's constantly in the end zone. I feel he's more of a volume receiver, and unless he gets up to 170 and really has an amazing year, he's not going to be up there. So I mean, at the top, you're really picking nits here. So I would, so far I've not been getting Michael Thomas on my team because he's getting drafted before guys like Julio Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster, Antonio Brown, all those guys, and it makes me a little bit nervous. I like Jones and Juju a little bit better than Thomas. Okay, that's it for the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. Tomorrow we will be back with all the fantasy news. We'll also be talking about my top 4 wide receivers. You can probably figure out who they are if you have been listening. Please check out our sponsor, www.mathradio.com, to pick up an online math course for your child. If you're listening to the podcast, we'd appreciate a 5-star rating and a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'd love a subscription from you and a comment. Leave one below. We'll see you tomorrow.